Hey guys, welcome back to Nina's Virtue. It has been a wonderful start to the new year, and as always, I just want to let you guys know how grateful I am that you guys are on this journey with me. There are seasons where God gives you an instruction that doesn't match the direction you thought you were headed in. This is where the step he's asking for feels disconnected from the future you're praying for, where the movement feels small, but the destiny feels big. And in those moments, trust becomes less about understanding the path and more about recognizing the pattern, the trend of how God has always led you. Because God is consistent, even when the direction isn't clear. So, I want to talk to you about finding your trend, which is basically you recognizing the pattern of how your obedience grows over time. You're not necessarily looking for one moment of trust in which you feel like you've surrendered all, but you're noticing the trajectory. So you're trying to understand how you respond to God's instruction consistently, where obedience is becoming quicker, deeper, and less resistant. Every believer has a trend, a recognizable rhythm in how God speaks, guides, corrects, and pulls you forward. For some, it may be conviction, disruption, opportunity. For others, it's restlessness. It's a door that keeps opening no matter how unqualified you feel. Your trend is the pattern of God's faithfulness in your life. And once you recognize that trend, trusting the instruction becomes easier because you're no longer depending on clarity. You're depending on consistency. You're not trusting the direction, you're trusting the director. I know in this season that I'm in right now, finding the trend is a result of my obedience. It's me asking myself, is my obedience increasing or delaying over time? I know for certain God has been asking me to do something that I have literally been like, God, you're asking me to do this thing, but I just feel like if I do this, then I'm going to have to lean on myself. And I'm recognizing that there is a lack of trust that I have for God right now that I need to grow in. I need to be rooted in, and I need to understand that if He got me through it before, He can get me through it again. With this, I want you to ask yourself, when instruction comes, is my pattern to move, to stall, or to seek confirmation indefinitely? I have been seeking confirmation for literally a month and a half, and I watched a sermon today that literally said, if you know you hear the voice of God, if you know what God sounds like, why do you have to constantly go to other people to get confirmation in something He's already confirmed for you? And it kind of hit me in the chest because it's like not me being blessed to hear His voice when that's something that I've prayed for. And because I don't like what He's saying to me, I'm like, nah, nah, I must be hearing wrong. Let me ask somebody else. But these other people don't know the calling that God has placed on my life. They don't know the next door God is going to open for me. So they cannot possibly know what exactly to tell me to help me weather this storm or embrace the impact that God is going to make on my life once I give Him this yes, this okay, I'll do it. And now, even me doing this episode right now, I'm like, wow, I've been kind of stalling. And it's not a good feeling because I know deep down that I am disappointing God in a way, not in so that He's like upset with me, but He's just like, you've made it so far trusting me in seasons where you knew no ultimate end. You couldn't see what was next and you trusted me. So why right now are you asking me for so much information when all you have to do is surrender? As we talk about this rhythm that we are going to surrender to, I always express in your purposeful pursuit, you have 3 targets or 3 steps that you're going to go through just to get closer to your destiny. And that is, of course, the affirm it, create it, pursue it call to action, where we're speaking God's truth over our life. We're building with what He entrusted to us, and we're walking with diligence and faith. But today, I want to sit in what created really means, because we live in a world right now where everything is about affirmations, and affirmations are beautiful. Like, they really are a great accessory and tool to possibly renew your mind. But once you use the word to align with the way you want to believe in yourself, or the way you want to see things happen in your life, you can see that God has already deemed certain things possible. You just have to claim it, decree and declare it. With create it, I'm going to go back to Deuteronomy 8:18, where it says, remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce. Created is the part of the journey where God says, I've already placed something in your hands. Now trust me enough to use it. Created is not about perfection. It's not about having the full plan. It's not about knowing every step. Created is about honoring the instruction. It's the moment where you stop waiting for clarity and start building with what you know. It's where you take the idea out of your head and give it form, where you take the vision out of your spirit and give it structure. This is an opportunity to take the instruction God whispered and give it movement. Psychology calls this agency, the belief that your actions matter. Scripture calls it stewardship. This is the belief that what God gave you is meant to be used. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. I always express to you guys that when you're working on something, you may really care about what others think, but I want you to understand that this verse that I just expressed is actually the heartbeat of Create It. Because when God gives you an instruction, He's not just asking you to build. He's asking you to do so with intention, excellence, and devotion. This is with a heart that knows who you're producing for. You create with excellence because it honors God. You build faithfully even when the results are delayed. You show up consistently because God sees you are working. Creation becomes a beautiful thing when God is the reason you show up. And your work doesn't have to be church work to be something noted as godly. Your creativity doesn't have to be ministry to be sacred. Your calling doesn't have to look religious to carry God's presence. If God entrusted it to you, He is in it. Your wholehearted effort is a sign of your integrity. The diligence you show is your worship. The consistency is your obedience. And your excellence in which you produce is the honor. And if you're struggling with accountability, if you're feeling unseen, or you're frustrated by the lack of praise or recognition, shift who you are producing for. Set yourself free from external validation. Anchor your effort in divine approval. Colossians 3:23 is your reminder that your work is not random. Your creation is not unnoticed, and your obedience is not wasted. You create with excellence because God is worthy of excellence. You build faithfully because God is faithful. And you continue to show up because you know God sees you. This verse is an invitation to root your creativity and purpose, your effort in worship, and your instruction in trust. Trusting the instruction means you stop waiting for the full picture and start moving with the pieces God gave you. It means you stop demanding certainty and start honoring the trend. It means you stop rehearsing your smallness and start creating from your calling. Trust should not be passive. It's not stillness. And it definitely needs to stop being waiting for a sign. Trust must be obedience with a pulse. It's movement without full visibility. Trust is creating what God placed in your hands, even when you don't understand how it connects to where you're going. 2 questions I want you to ask yourself this week is, what is my consistent pattern when instruction challenges my preference? And how long do I wait before moving once I'm clear on what God asked? These questions aren't only for you, they're for me as well. Because Lord knows I take way too long to move. Once God makes it apparent to me, this is what I want, this is what I'm asking you to do, this is what will open the door for you. I have found this thing in me that says, okay, God told me to do this. Now I'm going to set everything up to make sure when I do this thing that God asked me to do, that I have something to fall on, just in case it doesn't work out the way that I think God is going to work it out. And that is when I remove God's power from my life, when I remove God's strength from my life, because now I am doing everything humanly possible to make sure I have a safety net that should not be required if I truly believe that I have God. And that's sad. It's not something I'm proud to share, but it's my truth. And I hope it does something for you guys that are possibly trying to figure out, like, well, how do I say I trust you and I can't wait to let you work, to let you provide for me, to let you prosper me? The second question I asked was, what is my consistent pattern when instruction challenges my preference? That goes back to me trying to set up a bulletproof plan to make sure that if God doesn't do what I want him to do, that I have something to fall back on. My consistent pattern is, honestly, sadly, I do find myself a lot of the times being like, God told me to do this, and I'm going to Paul, Peter, Jim, and John, Clarice, and Sabrina to see. And God is like, oh my gosh, have ye little faith? Because who told you you needed all these people to affirm my word? And I have a way that I pray to God that in many prayers I say to him, like, God, you have the final say. And I know he'd be looking down on me sometimes like, how you saying I have the final say and you had to ask 6 people just to trust my final say? It's unacceptable. Really, it's unacceptable. Oh my gosh. I believe the hardest thing for me truly, though, is trying to recognize how I handle instruction that costs me my comfort or my approval from others, because I've had so many people see me go through different stages in my life. And there are people you have in your life that understand the goodness of God and understand trials and tribulations. And then there are others that are like, the God you serve, there's no way you serve a God and your life looks like this. And it can be very discouraging sometimes to trust that through it all, that because God has asked me to do something, that I can surrender these superficial things. But I'm growing and I'm working through that, because if I have nothing, I should truly be okay with just having God. Like the song says, if the lowest place I reach is at your feet, then I've seen it all. And that should be enough for all of us. It should really be enough. But we live in a world right now where everything is so like status enthused that we're trying to reach the status and not reach heaven. We're trying to reach a posture of success and not reach what God has for us. And we don't even realize that we sabotage what God has for us by trying to make a plan that can reroute if we don't agree with what he's asking us to do, which means in reality, we're not being obedient and we're not actually surrendering to the call, and we lack trust. So the question is, how do we grow this trust? Trust grows the same way muscles do, through repeated intentional use under resistance. So we should be obeying in the small before demanding clarity in the big. Trust is trained on manageable assignments. Are you showing up consistently? Are you apologizing to people even when you don't feel like you're wrong? Are you starting the outline though you don't know the end result? Are you returning the call? Small obedience builds the confidence to carry heavier instruction. In Luke 16:10, it says, whoever is faithful with little will be faithful with much. You can shorten the gap between instruction and action. Growth shows up in response time. Early trust asks many questions, but mature trust moves with fewer negotiations. You don't have to rush, but you do have to move. And maybe it's time for you to build a deeper relationship with God, where you are seeking to learn God's character and not just his commands. Trust is able to deepen when you know who is speaking to you. God's instructions a lot of the time align with scripture. You must know that his correction is purposeful, not condemning, and his timing is truly protective. When you trust his heart, obedience feels safer. One thing that we're always taught is to keep receipts of God's faithfulness. So, one thing for me in this journey that I've been on, whenever there's like a breakthrough that happens or a place where I feel like I hear God or something that God has answered for me, immediately I write down these things because I recognize that God is like, hey, do this or this is going to happen. And when the thing happens or I do the thing, I realize that the obedience leads to some type of provision or peace. And sometimes it leads to a growth that I didn't even know I was ready for. So, your memory of who God is and the things that he's brought you through will strengthen your trust. Let's try to change our posture and allow it to be a thing where trust grows when obedience becomes our reflex and not our reaction. Instruction is often followed by tension, but the tension is actually proof of growth. Know that your faith isn't proven by ease, but by endurance. It's fair to ask yourself, what is your desire? What is the one thing you've been planning to do but still haven't executed because of what you think you need? Or the trust you lack? If you've already worked through affirming who you are, if you've acknowledged what you're capable of, and recognized how accessible success truly is to you, then you're ready. You're ready to build a blueprint, ready to start researching. You're ready to lean into a new skill that strengthens what you are preparing for. Because creation is where your trust becomes real. Creation is where obedience becomes evidence. It's where your calling begins to take shape. So as you move forward, I want you to remember this. Find your trend, trust the instruction, and create what God has placed in your hands. Until next time, guys, have a great week.